Welcome back to Fitness or Fiction. Today we're talking about BAMs, Bare Ace Minimums. Curtis, nice biceps. Cue the intro. So BAMs, bare minimums for your habits, lifestyle, routine. I think this is the KISS method of we're trying to keep it simple, stupid. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated to take care of yourself, but that doesn't mean that it's easy.
I like to do keep it simple, sir and ma'am.
Stupid. Just kidding.
Yeah, well, listen, I think it's an impactful topic because we've covered in the past, how do I keep my workouts simple? And we've covered how do I keep my nutrition simple and things like that. But this is a little bit different. The concept here is, what are some things I can institute right away that'll make big differences? Because we do talk a lot about, here's all the things that you'll see people run towards that kind of distract them from what they're trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, is that the most impactful thing, the first step you should take, or is that down the line when you can think about that? Mm-hmm. And most of the time it's the latter. So as far as keeping it simple, I think there's a few different zones that we can get into. So we can obviously talk about exercise, and I think that's probably a good place to start. But as far as exercise goes, what are some habits, routines, and actions that we can take that are kind of the lowest hanging fruit? Let's start there.
I think you need to identify your why, prioritize it, and then schedule it. And that doesn't mean it needs to be 5-6 days a week. It could be 1 day a week. It could be 2 days a week. And it doesn't need to be an hour and a half. It could be 30 minutes. But if you identify why you're doing it, and the end goal should be to take care of yourself because you love yourself, but you also want to be the best version of yourself for yourself and your family and your community and beyond. So your why, prioritize it, schedule it, and then stick to it. Okay,
let me push you on that. So getting into the why, I don't like telling people what their why should be. And I understand what you're saying. I can see the value behind that, but for me, their why can be almost anything as long as they find it impactful. So what I would say is find the most impactful why, and I don't care how deep it is. You can just tell me, I'd feel way better with a six-pack. It's like, okay, all that other stuff is going to happen anyway. All this stuff that I think is impactful, being a better version for their family, all the stuff that is part of my value system, I see that there. But I don't believe that the coach's value system should fall on the client. So I think that I would simplify that, and I'd just say, what's the most impactful thing that's going to keep you driven to do this? Like, let's start there. Like, it doesn't even need to be this big, deep why, just like, will this keep you motivated? What's the most impactful reason you should do this? Boom, done. Perfect. And then when we start talking about scheduling it, let's give a little teeth to that. Like, what does scheduling it look like? What should it look like in your opinion? Like, when if they're just starting, how should they choose how many days a week, and how should they choose how long? Because what I see all the time is, well, it needs to be 3 days a week and it needs to be an hour, and that's challenging for most people that I talk to, especially it's September. That's going to be hard for people. So how do you think people should discuss, this is how many times a week and here's how much time per bout?
Well, every person is going to be different based off of their schedule and flexibility and such like that. I think that's where the value of having a coach comes into play, because they can actually help you take the unbiased out of your schedule and lay it down with them and actually lay down a true action plan. I know me and you have been in the business long enough. I find a lot of people like to overshoot it, and if you overshoot it, then it's a little bit easier to fail, and that can kind of be a detriment to your motivation and drive, because a lot of people also suffer from that all or nothing mentality.
Yeah.
Not saying it's good to undershoot it either, but it needs to be realistic.
How about something like less than you think?
It could be. Like, that's why I was saying at the start of the episode, like, if we're talking about BAM, the bare ass minimum, 1-2 times a week. Just get started, get the ball rolling. And I think that snowballs once you start to see the value in it, and you start to see that there's the benefits from it, whether it's, man, I shoveled the snow off the driveway today and I wasn't tired. Like, that was the first time in 5 years that I felt like that. Or I shoveled the walk, or I walked the dog, or I played with the kids. And they start feeling the benefits from once. It can kind of tickle the interest of, what happens if I go twice? What happens if I start eating a little bit better too?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the 2x2.
2x2 pieces of wood.
Yeah, exactly. Of course. Yeah, I love that timber, baby.
It's better than 2x4.
So nice.
2x2.
Yeah. So 2 times a week, 20 minutes. That seems like something that's going to be real tough not to hit, right?
Sounds really TikTok, Curtis.
Well,
you making the trend right now on
no,
TikTok?
I'm not. I'm not on TikTok. So two times a week at 20 minutes, I like doing that as a starting point, because a lot of times when people get twice a week, they're going to be like, oh, I'll get a third. Yeah, man, I overcame it. But if somebody says I'm going to do 3 times a week for an hour and they do twice a week for 45 minutes, they think it's a loss. Like that registers as a loss. So when somebody says I'm going to do 3 times, I'm like, how about we start with 2? When you're consistent for 3 weeks, then we'll go 3. And like if you do 3, that's cool. Here's a half body split. Just repeat the first workout if you're going to do a third one, and so on and so forth. You can do 4. I don't care. But we're going to start out with this. And that has been the most successful way. I've seen a lot of people get overwhelmed, but I've had very few people that when they feel like they can do more, stop. Mm-hmm. They'll just add more. It's like, oh, and I went for a ride, and I just took that first workout and did it again, right? I think that's a lot more successful. So when we talk about bare ass minimums, I think that's a really, really easy thing to say. Like, hey, here's a bare ass minimum. Like if you had the choice between once a week for 40 minutes or your client to do 2 times a week for 20 minutes, what would you choose and why?
I'd probably shoot for the 220.
Why?
For me, I think that it would be more beneficial for habit building in the long run because it's more frequent.
Yeah, and it's more recoverable, and you're training your neurological system more frequently, which is better.
The barrier to entry is a little bit less because you're not getting stuck in 40 minutes of work. It's just a quick 20.
Less of a looming thing. Yeah, there's a lot of things there, both physiologically and psychologically. So for me, I think when we talk about bare ass minimums, it doesn't have to be 2 by 20. If you haven't done anything before, fine. If you're like, hey, I'm used to working out 3 times a week, then by all means, I love it, sure. But like if you're just getting back into it after a long hiatus and it's like, I think I got 3 times a week, cool, start with 2. I think I got an hour, start with 45. Like less than you think, I think is a fair thing to say when we're looking at people getting started. So let's talk about actions in there. So they start, here's what I actually want to do, and here's how many times, and I'm scheduling it, perfect. What would you say the best thing to do as far as exercise is? Like what would you coach somebody on right away?
I don't know if this is talking about bare ass minimums anymore, though. We're just...
Well, I don't know. We can discuss that. As far as entry, it's like, okay, I'm going to
because bare ass minimum for exercise, again, is person specific. It could be, for one person, it could just be walking for 20 minutes or outside.
Sure.
For another person, it could be resistance training.
Which would you choose?
Oh, I would choose resistance training every day of the week for those 2 days.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would choose resistance training over walking, over... It's tricky, though, because there's a lot of caveats to it. Like sports, let's say, if somebody was going to play volleyball twice a week or resistance train twice a week, they enjoy volleyball more and there's more community to it, so they might continue for longer and see better results from that specifically, whereas resistance training isn't that fun and I don't like it and da-da-da-da-da. So it's very person-specific. So
there's 2 veins there. The first one would be something that you enjoy doing that you think you can stick to, and I'm cool with that. When somebody says specifically, I want to do resistance training because I want to gain muscle, I'm not going to gain muscle doing volleyball. Sweet. Okay, cool. So for that person, it's like, okay, bare ass minimum. What are you going to try to do? What do you choose? Where do you start?
For resistance training?
Yeah.
Why do you keep asking me all the questions?
I don't know. You asked me. Hit it.
What did I ask you?
I said, why don't you ask me? Do it.
Okay, what would you choose for your 2 by 20?
Well, let me tell you.
Oh, you just wanted it.
Yeah. Well, if I could choose resistance training for a person, I would choose stuff that's pretty supported at first. I know that people go to like these complex drills like the squat and things like that, but I'd be
make
like,
them do snatches and muscle up.
Yeah. I'd be like, man, let's go low barrier to entry. Like give me a hack squat over a squat because it's easier to execute and it's more scalable right away. Right? Less learning. That means easier to do, less turbulence. I'll take it. Right? Well, I have access to a gym. Sweet. Like here's some stuff that you can do. And you can go hard on it, and I'm not worried about you hurting yourself. I like that, right? So if somebody were to ask me, I haven't done anything, what should I do? I'd be like, I tell you what, set a timer, do 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. You got 20 minutes. If you do that, you do 5 sets of everything you choose, you get 4 exercises. You do something lower body push, something lower body pull, upper body push, upper body pull. That's 4 exercises. It's going to be 5 minutes apiece. Bang, bang, bam. Thank you. Done. Right? And it's going to work out really well. And that's just a full body split, and it's not anything earth shattering, but it'll work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the machines can make a person, the barrier to entry, easier because again they're fixed, right? They just kind of like lock you in.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could make an argument for a lot of other things, but even like how many push-ups have you seen that are like rock solid?
Well, and that's the thing with this too. Like you can make an argument that like, oh, pushing 100 pounds on the hack squat would be better off if they're doing body weight squats and trying to get to the best depth possible and quality over
it would be a hard
miscellaneous
argument.
Intensity. I don't know.
That would be a hard argument to win, especially if you have somebody who's looking to change their physique. You take a hack squat, you can put more intensity through it with less technical skill.
Yeah, and I guess to that point of the conversation, when we're talking about bare ass minimums, I'm not necessarily saying everybody who wants to do this wants to change their physique. Maybe they just want to incorporate a healthier
That's right.
lifestyle.
Depends on their why.
Yeah.
But even if you wanted to incorporate a healthier lifestyle, for the most part, if you take somebody and say, hey, here's a hack squat, can you keep your feet flat? Yeah. How low can you go? There. Perfect. You notice when you add weight. There's a lot of things that you can do, and you can make a solid argument for that. On the other end of it, it's like, well, the squat is more functional for their daily life and whatever else. And don't get me wrong, I love the squat. But I'm saying, like, what do you need as far as a bare-ass minimum to actually get things to change? Well, you need tension. And that's going to work out really well with the tension. Sorry?
I don't love the squat.
What do you love?
Personally, I much prefer, like, Bulgarian split squats, front foot elevated squats, Cossack squats.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I really enjoy. I don't think the squat is the best place to start, though, is my point, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a great exercise, but it's not all of that in a bag of potato chips. So anyways, that's a contention you could absolutely make, and I would say that it's more simple. And for my experience as an online coach, when in doubt, make it more simple.
To this point as well, if this is the route we're going down, if you're in this idea or this boat of just the 2x20 and just hitting some machines, even doing 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, I think that's all great. The next point is like relative intensity. For me, if you're just starting out, the relative intensity could fluctuate anywhere between 50% to 75%. I don't think it needs to be as intense as you or I would push 10 years into our lifting career.
No,
and that's kind of the expectations that the internet pumps out. Like everything should be like you should be sweating, dying.
Well, listen, the more intensity you put in, the less time you need to put in. That's well researched, well documented. So, like if you take somebody that's doing 5 by 30 seconds and 30 seconds rest, on your last set, it should be hard to get all 30 seconds with the weight you selected. Yeah. Like if you fail before the 30 seconds, perfect. Should you fail every set? No, but it'll escalate on you. And, are you going to want to stay there forever? No, but that's a great place to start for the first 3, maybe 4 weeks. So end of day, it's not going to fit for every circumstance, but that's a pretty infallible start.
You would be surprised. I think anybody listening would be surprised at the change that you would receive if you did that for 3 months. If you were a non-exerciser,
yeah,
if you've been a non-exerciser for a long time.
If you did that for 1 month, and started changing it where you gave yourself some more rest and intensified, you'd get incredible changes. But even if you'd stuck with that for longer than the 4 weeks, ideally you would be switching it up to something more intense after the first 4 weeks. But even to your point, if you did stick to that for the first 3 months, you'd be surprised how far that could take you.
Yeah.
Like you've heard of people talk trash about, well, everybody does 3x10 and whatever else, right?
Yeah.
I have met some people that have taken 3x10 pretty far.
Oh, yeah.
They've never changed up anything with their protocol, just maybe their split or the exercises that they do so they don't get bored. But I've seen people that have taken that and scaled it so they have some decent physiques, man.
Yeah, and the 3x10 changes with 30 seconds break versus 2 minutes break.
Of course.
3x10 changes based off of obviously relative intensity, tempo, things like this. So
yeah,
it can be mixed up quite a bit. I still often do like 3x10 on select exercises regularly.
Yeah, well, and the point being, are we trying to hit a bullseye every time, or are we just trying to get on the board? At the end of the day, if somebody can't do a perfect lat pull around for the ideal tension on their lumbar lat fibers, but they're going to do some description of the pull down and try to scale it and intensify it, they're going to get results.
Those are my favorite fibers, by the way.
Oh, exactly. Perfect.
The lumbar, the lower lumbar lap
but
fibers.
See, my point is, like, you don't even need to know what fibers. It's like, well, do some sort of a pull down variation. It doesn't have to be perfect, but do something.
Yeah.
So like when we talk about bare ass minimums, it doesn't need to be particularly dignified, but like get in and try to do better than you did last time. I'd say that's a pretty good guideline.
Try to do better than you did last time. Try to feel it too. Try to actually see what's happening. A lot of people, I love it as a trainer, when they're like, where should I be feeling this? I'm like, I don't know. Where are you feeling it? Like, you tell me. You tell me, and then we'll talk about it.
Well, man, there's nothing more frustrating for me than when I see somebody in the gym that they don't have any intention to their drill and there's no tension involved in their drill. Meaning, like, you just see them kind of moving back and forth, kind of like dancing with weights, right?
Yeah.
And it's not frustrating because of that person. It's frustrating because it's not what they think it is. Like, they're trying to do something for themselves, but it's not going to give them everything that they want, or even a portion of what they think they're going to get. And because of that, it's going to be frustrating for them. So I'm not frustrated at them. I'm frustrated for them.
Yeah. You know, for me, the mind-muscle connection, like where should I feel it, is something that always needs to be continuously worked on. Like, I think that I'm a pretty athletic dude, and I still have a hard time feeling certain things in my body. One of them being like just my abs in general, bracing them during big lifts, or specifically I've been doing like working on my toes to bar. It's so hard for me to actually activate the right tissue, and I often feel in my hips and low back. But if I hold it at the top for 5 seconds and do one big juicy eccentric, all of a sudden I can do 5-10 reps and I can connect to my abs, and I'm just like, my mind is talking to them much better after a little bit of conscious effort.
Well, yeah, and there's contentions you can make on that too, because like there's drills where you won't feel them as much because you're on a more lengthened position, but you can put as much tension or more through it. So I don't think that sensation is paramount necessarily. However, getting better at connecting with it than you were previously in the same drill, I think does have value.
Yep.
So, but like when it comes to exercise, at the end of the day, if I could choose resistance training versus cardio, I would choose resistance. But again, I've said this a bunch of times. If I chose exercise versus no exercise, I'd be like, yeah, exercise. Like ride a bike for 20 minutes. Do something that's going to get your heart going.
What is the most simple way, because I don't have it, what is the most simple way you can convince somebody to do resistance training over cardio without overcomplicating it and actually getting their buy-in? And you're trying to convince somebody who favors cardio. They're like, no, I don't want to lift weights, Curtis. I just want to do cardio. Well, how can you simply convert them? One of us.
Well, the first thing that I would say to somebody that we were having that conversation is, I would say, what do you want out of it? Because if you want any sort of muscular change, you're going to need resistance training. So if that's part of your goal, you're going to need it. The cardio's not going to do that for you. The other thing is, I'm not against cardio, just to be clear. But like if I wanted somebody to really see that resistance training should be part of it, I'd be like, look at the research. You can do like a 30-second isometric hold on your leg extension, and you will have changes in both strength and muscle. 30 seconds of cardio on its own, one bout of 30 seconds, is going to have very little change in anything, and definitely not change your metabolism and muscle mass. So if that's part of your goal, then I would really think about adding resistance training. However, man, if you're just looking to lose some weight, even if resistance training is more efficient and effective, if you like doing cardio, get it, but you better dial your diet.
And now, how would you convince somebody? I don't want to get big. Like I don't want big muscles, Curtis. I don't want muscles. How would you convince them that that's actually something they should think twice about?
Well, there's a lot of things you can argue on that one. Like a lot of things you can argue on that one. But when you look and you see somebody muscular, that stuff doesn't happen on accident. Like, think about how many people you know that have been working for a real long time to get bigger, and how hard it is to convince the body to do that. For me, I would just say to the person, listen, muscle gain isn't how you think it is. This is not a TikTok world. Like, you don't have these 8-week befores and afters that are just outrageous. And even when you do, if you were to measure that person, it's not a lot of muscle gain. A lot of it is fat loss. And like a couple summers ago when I went down to like 6%, people kept asking me, how do you put on so much weight? I was like, I am lighter. by almost 8 pounds, which for a guy who walks around at 163, that's a lot. I was like 155. And they're like, oh, dude, you're way bigger. I'm like, no, I am smaller.
Yeah.
I'm just leaner. So what they see out there as far as results, a lot of it isn't the muscle gain they think it is. So it's just like the average person, if they're working really hard, they're going to get like 7 pounds of muscle a year if it's a guy. And girls will have an even harder time. So as far as I don't want to get too big, it's like, well, man, I don't want to accidentally become an Indy driver either. And going to and from work isn't going to make me that. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's one of those things. But convincing people, it's really just a matter of whether they have to be open to change. They have to be open to information. And a lot of times that is the case. And sometimes that's not the case.
Yeah.
So, you know, present the data, see how it lands. But for me, when it comes to exercise, again, start with less than you think. And resistance training is what I would bias because it can be more efficient and more effective. But then outside of that, when people are like, well, what should I do with my diet? What's the first thing that you would say for somebody to do with their diet? Lowest hanging fruit.
For me?
Yeah, bare ass minimum.
It's always been increasing protein.
Yeah, increase protein, man. Even if you don't know how much you're eating per day, more protein.
My second one, a close second for me, was water intake. But
oh, nice.
Yeah, it's always been about protein. So I've always gone through, like when we've done consultations, I'll go through people's average day with them of like nutrition. Like, Curtis, what do you eat for breakfast? What do you eat for lunch? On average, everyone's always like, well, it's different every day. Yeah, just give me the rough average, like just a rough average. And pretty much every time I've ever calculated people's macros just by eyeballing it, it's normally less than 100 grams. I don't know about you if you've ever paid
far
attention
less.
to that.
I've talked to some people that they're having like 23 grams a day.
And there's also a misconception with people's diets where they're like, oh yeah, I eat high protein breakfast. I have 1 egg. And I'm like, you know how much protein's in an egg?
6 grams.
Yeah, it's like 6 to 7 grams if it's a big boy.
Yeah.
No. So it's always been less than 100. So for me, I always try to strategize a way to get more protein in, like more protein per day. Oftentimes that can translate easily into a protein shake, but real food is always better. Yeah. But I normally try to kick some way somehow to get them over that 100 grams. Their macro should be, say if it's myself, it's you, it's a 160-pound dude, you should be like 160 grams of protein or more. My first goal would just be to get you to over 100. Exactly. And then once you're constantly over 100, then we're going to try to push it to maybe 125.
Well, yeah, exactly. And we're just going to bump it up like we would with exercise. But for me, I think more protein is a great place to start. I would agree with you on that one. And then the next place I go after that is like start with your protein at every meal. Like if you're sitting down to a meal, eat the protein first. Because what we end up finding is that if somebody's full, they're full on their protein. So they're not eating as many carbs and fats. Yeah. So that's kind of the next place that I go. And then, you know, after that, it's like, okay, so how much total are you eating per day? Right? If you get a handle on that, it's like, well, I'm still gaining weight. I'm going to have 10% less. Like, not crazy. Not crazy at all. But nutrition for me has been overcomplicated, and with the proliferation of all these different styles of eating, it's like, well, you can do a lot of different styles. What are we trying to do? We're trying to either create a deficit or a surplus. So if you can get a handle on which one of those you're in and that you're having enough protein, you can accomplish a lot.
Yeah, I think the reason why I said I'm going for water as the second bout of attack is because generally when people are overblowing their calories, drinking them is the easiest way to get them down. So if you're drinking...
Yeah, only water, yeah.
Yeah, juice, pop, all this crap.
Agree.
You're drinking a lot of real quick, easy calories. So when I say go for only water, start substituting only water, it can make a big difference. And the calories from a soda pop is not the same as calories from a bundle of strawberries.
Oh, fact, yeah. Well, and the other thing for me, like outside of that, when it's like, okay, we'll get a hold of your protein, we're going to eat that first. And how much are we totally eating? Even before that, sometimes I say, listen, 3 times a day you eat. Like none of the snacking in between. We're just going to have 3 meals a day and eat until you're full. And that tends to be very, very effective. I have a guy that's down 40 pounds trying to get his protein up and eating it first and having 3 meals a day. That's all. Like talk about bare ass minimum. That's all he's doing. He's tried to track before. He had a really hard time with it. And he is the sort of guy that goes up and down and has a really hard go. But like he's actually been holding pretty steady for some time. And he's working out. He's doing weights 4 times a week. And he's having 3 meals a day. No any sort of anything to drink other than water or coffee. And, you know, he had a big kickback for me. He's like, I can't stick to 3 meals a day on the weekend. I was like, why? He's like, well, I own a brewery and whatever else. And I'm like, no, man, if you're going to sit down to some beers, you better have your meal with that, because that's your meal. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't get beers outside of your meal.
Yeah.
And he's doing really great with it. So,
yeah, I've never actually gone down that road of considering no snacks, but I think that's because I've been a snack eater my entire life. So my strategy was always, let's find some high protein option snacks. Like, let's get high protein, like Greek yogurt as your snack with healthy fats and nuts and whatever. So I always tried to work around the snacks like that, but that's because can't see a world where I would go without snacks myself.
Yeah, you're a cow. You eat all day. You're just chewing on that grass.
Yeah. Mulching away. So I don't think either of those are right or wrong. I think it's just different strategies depending on the person. So we go to exercise, then we go to nutrition, and then next for me would be recovery.
Yeah, I would say like supportive habits. So that'll include recovery. Obviously, you know, when you look at it, sleep is an easy one. We were just talking about how sleep isn't always the easy one as parents, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I'm going to get to bed at 11, but then I started cleaning this up, and then I did that, and then I checked my email and whatever else. So like sleep is a really good one. But when we look at recovery, I think time with people that you really care about is a really important one. And I think that's not focused on enough.
Present time.
Yeah. So go ahead.
The B word for me with present time, I agree with you, but what I hate about it is if I spend very quality present time with my son, it's like gone, because you are so in the moment that it feels like a lightning bolt, and then you're like, then I feel, holy crap, where did time go? Like, oh man.
Yep, that's true.
Saying it's a good thing.
Yep.
But that's the bad side of it.
Mm-hmm. So outside of sleep, spending time with loved ones, what are some other supportive habits that you would focus on? For me, I would think about quiet time, whether that's meditation or prayer or whatever. That can be a very, very potent tool, even just 5 minutes here and there.
Yeah, I have lots of little stuff like that I would do and recommend. I'm a big believer. Like I really enjoy breath work and meditation, journaling, reading, but I do not do any of them nearly as much as I want to. I wish that I did them more, and I want to continue to try to do them more because I find them so valuable. It was my son's birthday on Monday. He's 1 year old now, Mr. Jackson.
Oh, jeez.
And for his birthday, my wife and I went out and we bought a journal, and we're each going to write him a journal entry every birthday until he moves out, kind of debriefing and discussing like how he's been that year, how we were doing that year, how life has been that year, and to be like honest about the journal entry, like to make it all like just very, very transparent, because when we give it to him, he's going to be an adult, and it'll be like, hey, this was like a little log of what life was like during that time. And I'm almost hesitant to do that journal entry because it seems like such a daunting task. It feels very intense to try to do something like that, because it's very important. I'm going to do a rough copy. I'm going to transfer it to a good copy after.
You know, I would give you the feedback that if you did that entry and started sharing it with him when he's young, it's something that builds into their life. Sarah does a book for me every year, which is pictures of the year and debriefing the year for Father's Day. And I have those books, and they're all pictures and whatever else. The boys love going through those books, and it helps them remember stuff they've been through and like rehash it. So like letting him see it when he's young and whatever.
That would be weird for your boys, because it feels like it would lock in memories that perhaps you or I lost a long time ago because it wasn't constantly refreshed in our brains. You know what I mean? Like I have some memories when I was a child and a toddler, but not that many. It's very, very foggy. But maybe if it was hashed out to me regularly.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's value there, just sharing with them like this is how the year went. Here's some really big highlights and whatever. It just lets them know, like, we had a good time. You got a good life.
Yeah.
We love you. Like, it's good.
Yeah.
So, but outside of that, okay, we've talked about important time with people that you care about. We've talked about kind of taking your time to sleep, about like some recovery stuff, whether that's breath work or meditation or anything.
So with that, the recovery work, breath work, journaling, meditating, I feel like you should do some variation every single day. That's a big daunting task, and I struggle with it myself, but I have them on scaling categories, and the scaling categories are some take 60 seconds, some take 20 minutes, and often I'll opt in for the 60-second to 2-minute variations, and that could be a very conscious prayer in my bedroom before bed. where I just sit down and really focus on it for the 2 minutes that I'm going to do it. 60 seconds to me is lighting a stick of incense with a couple quick affirmations in my brain. Like, I hope Jackson has a good sleep. So I think it should be every day. I don't think it should be ignored, because for most young people who could be listening to this, I don't think you miss that much TikTok on a day. So to ask for 60 seconds of conscious prayer, conscious work, journaling, whatever, that's the bare ass minimum to me, is doing that every day, even if it's just 60 seconds.
Yeah, well, that's one of those tasks that if you can lock in on, it's very much like a cold bath. A cold bath doesn't need to be that long, as we discussed recently. But if you can build resilience, like if I were to hash out this whole thing and be like, what is the bare ass minimum? It's like, learn how to get uncomfortable. Learn how to do that. You'll accomplish more in the gym. If you can go deeper into uncomfortable, you're probably going to accomplish more there.
You know what's weird though about all this health information is a lot of it is uncomfortable, even the stuff that should be easy, because exercise can be uncomfortable. Trying to get to bed with enough time to get a full rested sleep is uncomfortable, and that's why my brain forces me to do random tasks like, oh, I should do this before I go to sleep. Oh, I should do this. Oh, I wanted to be in bed by 10, but now it's midnight because my brain won't let me sleep, and that's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to try to go to sleep with a full brain.
Self-efficacy is uncomfortable, man. Trying to get yourself to do something and sticking to it is uncomfortable, but I actually think if we were to take this whole thing and be like, what is the bare ass minimum? What can I do today without blowing my brains out on how many different tasks I have to do? It's like, get more comfortable being uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And that sounds so cheeky, but it's like, man, do something uncomfortable today. It doesn't, like, even when you say you got to do journaling or whatever every day, it's like, well, listen, what if I just chose one thing every day that's uncomfortable? Like one thing. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to exercise twice a week. Perfect. So what am I going to do the other 5 days? I don't know. Maybe I'll do a cold bath one day. Maybe I'll do journaling one day. Probably only take 60 seconds. But each day I'm choosing to do something that, like, it's hard to get myself to do. Yeah. I think that would build some major momentum for a lot of people.
I like it.
So as far as bare ass minimums,
get uncomfortable.
Yeah. If you can get uncomfortable just once a day, I think you'd be really surprised with what it can do for you. I really do. And that's multifactorial. It's not just exercise. It's not just diet. It's not just habits surrounding that. That's life, man. Like, when you look at a task that's like, oh man, that's going to be tough. It's going to be uncomfortable. If you're used to being there, it's not that bad.
Easier to get started.
Yeah. I think psychologically that's kind of the trump card.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, if you made it this far, thanks for sticking with us. Leave a comment if you think that we missed anything, or if you think that we're out to lunch on anything, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for joining us this week. We appreciate your support.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you would subscribe, follow, and throw us a like on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts.